Hey everybody, it's Chainsaw Gears 12, and today we are talking about the Ocean's brand new album entitled Pelagial. Two quick things before I actually dive into this review. If you don't know what this album is or this band, you'll understand why I said that in a little bit. But the two quick things first. Another reviewer that I recently saw his review of this album and gave it a huge positive review and made me go, I have to take this out, because I've actually heard of the band The Ocean live back in 2011 when I saw some other bands live as well. And they really blew me away musically because they were doing a lot of different types of metal. I really didn't check out their stuff a lot after seeing that show, but this reviewer giving this really positive review about this new album that I totally didn't hear about made me have to go listen to this. So I have to give a huge shout out to EQPTV. Link in the description. Check out his review on his channel. He's a really cool dude. Check him out. See what you think. And the second thing is that I'm not going to mention anybody's name in this band because I do not want to butcher their name, because if I try to pronounce their name, I'm going to screw it up, and I just don't want to do that. I'd rather just call them by what they do in the band: vocalist, guitar, bass, or drum. So that's how it's going to happen. So if you're offended by that, I'm sorry. Anyways, let's dive into this album, Pelagial. So the first thing you have to notice about this album is that there's so much complex stuff happening. It's 53 minutes of material, and that might seem kind of short to bands that have a lot of different types of variety of genres of metal going on, but really it feels like the album's longer than it actually is, and I think that's because there's so much variety of metal going on: progressive metal, sludge metal, experimental metal, post-metal, just to name a few. There's more varieties and little bits and pieces of different types of metal. And like I was saying, diving into this album is about layers of the ocean, starting from the top of the ocean all the way down to the very, very, very bottom. And as you can guess, the very beginning of this album is peaceful, calm, soothing, piano, really beautiful stuff, because you're at the top of the ocean. It's beautiful. It's just really calm looking to see it. And then as you go deeper into the ocean, it gets darker. The music gets darker as well. And that's what I love, is that as we're going lower into this ocean, as we're diving through the ocean to the very bottom, from the very top, the music changes so much, because that's the way I think it would go. Because if this album was seriously one genre of metal, it wouldn't work. It just would not work in what they're trying to accomplish, which they do with this album, because there's so much variety going on. Another quick thing that was really interesting that I found out is that this album was actually just going to be just an instrumental album from this band. Their vocalist, who joined them back in 2010, actually had some health problems, some vocal issues where he wasn't able to perform, sing, growl, whatever. And originally the band was just going to go and create this album as an instrumental album and see what happens later if the vocalist is going to able to continue. And he actually came back and basically wanted to be a part of the album. And originally, when he did come back, they will say, okay, well, we'll put you on the last two tracks. So basically people think, oh, it's instrumental. At the very end, last two tracks, boom, we have the vocalist. But basically the band was going, well, we don't want you to write about sperm whales versus a giant squid. That just would feel weird. And if they went down that route lyrically throughout this album, no. But that's not what happened. So instead, the vocalist gave some really interesting and really beautiful and just really outstanding lyrics on this whole entire album. And I'll get to that in a minute, about how the difference between instrumental and the actual vocal version of this album. But I do want to talk about the band sound first, and then, well, basically the vocalist right now. But he just really brought something special lyrically here, because it just made the whole album sound completely different. And the thing is that since the band did decide to write this as an instrumental album, because there's so much stuff musically happening within the 53 minutes, that they're actually on limited edition versions of this album. I believe it's the limited edition, is that you get two discs. The one disc is the instrumental version, the original way it was supposed to be. And then the other disc, the second disc, is actually the vocal version. And the thing I wanted to talk about that I mentioned about a minute ago is that when I heard the whole entire album first, I heard it as the instrumental, because that's the original way that it was written. And the thing is that you can't just sit around and listen to this album. If you really want to catch every little thing that's happening on this album, you have to really put yourself to listen to it. You have to really focus. And it's like every little thing, like every 30 seconds, there's always something new. There's always something different that's making the song a little bit better, or making the song sound a little bit different. And there's so much variety of riffs, melodies, drum patterns, bass parts, and vocal parts when you're listening to the vocal version, that it's really hard to say you can't like this album unless you just don't like this type of material. But for me, it's like there's so much stuff to like and love on this album. There's so much stuff to grab onto. Like, I love the melodies. Oh, I love the bass. I love the drums. Or the vocal version. I love the vocals. So for me, it's like there's so much things to like. It's kind of hard to say I don't like this album, but that's just my opinion. But anyways, back to the the instrumental and the vocal version. When I heard the full album first in its entirety, the instrumental version, and then when I went to the second listen of the album, vocal version, I found something strange. But it's also good at the same time, but it's just, I've never experienced this before, because I don't think a band I've ever heard has ever done this before, where the instrumental version, like my personal favorite track, which is track 3, Impasses, the instrumental version had so much melody, had this really amazing melody part that repeated 8 times, and I loved it. I keep listening to it, I'm repeating it to death. But I love that track. It has so much interesting stuff going on besides that melody part that I'm loving. And it has just a really cool sound, because you're starting to get lower into the ocean, but it's still kind of beautiful in a way. And then you hear the vocal version of the same track, Impasses, number 3, on the same, the second disc. And feeling for what this song was instrumental to, hearing with the vocals and the lyrics added as another layer, it made it feel like a completely different song. Because when the vocalist basically is trying to say what he needs to say to you, and basically you have to hear the music and what he has to say, the words, it's kind of hard not to focus on what he's trying to say to you. And adding the lyrics over this music, after hearing it without vocals, I loved it. After hearing it with vocals, I loved it, because it's like 2 different songs, but it's the same music. It just feels like 2 different songs, because the lyrics make me think something different. Because when I listen to music, I imagine how this would look. Because we're in an ocean, I'm imagining what layer it's at on this track 3 with instrumental. But when I'm hearing the vocal version, it's making me picture something different. And I think that's good, because it gives me something different to see. Because now I have 2 albums that, in a way, are different, but they're the same music. It's just the vocals and the lyrics add another layer to all this music, that it makes me feel completely different about the same exact song, just that the vocal version makes me think different than the instrumental version. So I love that. So I recommend, if you're going to get this album, if you listen to it and love it, please get the limited edition with both versions, because I can't be the only one that feels this, where the instrumental version of the same song with the vocals have 2 different feels, even though it's the same exact song, just vocals on this version, completely different feel to me. So, that's really what it is. I just love this. So, let's talk about the sound of the band members. So, like I said, not going to mention names. I've already talked about the vocalist. He did really well on this album. He did really well for what he did, because when he came in here, basically the album was complete with the instrumental version, and then he came in and gave some really unique lyrics, as I said earlier in the review, that he made this album stand out even more on the vocal version. So he did really good. He sang, and he also did his growls on parts that needed to happen, because there's some parts where if he would have did vocals, I would have had a gripe about, but he luckily didn't do vocals on some of the parts that I really love on the instrumental version, so he still made it enjoyable. So props to him. The guitarist, wow, both of them are amazing. This is the key element to what this album is, because like I said, there's so much variety of different styles of metal going into this, progressive metal, experimental, blah blah blah, all that. Like I said, there's still more that I haven't mentioned, because there's so much happening. The guitarists make this album what it is, because there's so much melodies. As you're going from the top of the layer of the ocean, the very beginning of the album, it's smooth and calm, and the melodies are very light and peaceful. Then as you get lower, the melodies get a darker tone. The riffs get heavier, crunchier, sludgier. What other words you can think of? It's just the lower you get on the layers of the ocean, the farther you get into this album, the guitarist change it up so much and add something different here, or we are going to add piano here, we're going to add violin here, and the guitarists are going to continuously come up with these unique riffs and melodies that make this album even more enjoyable. So props to the guitarist. Their guitar tone's amazing. It's heavy but not too heavy, and I just enjoyed that. Man, 53 minutes of continuously changing up stuff. That's just impressive. The bass player, same thing he was doing. He was doing the same thing basically the guitarists were doing. Not saying that that's bad. It's just, you know, the variety of changes you have to go through for the 53 minutes. Because like I said earlier, if this album was completely one genre of metal, it would not work. The bass player has to follow along with what the guitarists are doing, and he does add some different stuff, and I really enjoyed that. And props to him, because keeping up with this guitarist is probably not easy, because this music does get technically crazy and goes through a bunch of changes that I could not keep up. So props to the bass player for doing that. The drummer, more great praise for him. Like, man, it's just, the drummer was doing something special here, because like there's so many changes, because you're going through the different layers of the ocean and you're just going lower, and it gets technically crazier, gets faster, gets heavier, gets slower, whatever the case may be. The drummer fits right along with it, with the drum patterns, the drum fills. But when the songs get crazy, he gets massive crazy. He goes all over the drum kit, and I'm just impressed by the drumming on this album. It really stands out. And I'm impressed by everything on this album. The instrumental version is just, to me, almost perfect in my opinion. The vocal version, it's basically almost perfect as well. I mean, this album really is a standout album that I have to give so much praise for, because Pelagial really showed me what this band can accomplish. And what this band accomplished was writing a 53-minute album, epic album, about the layers of the ocean, with so much variety of different types of metal fused into one album, and they accomplished it very well. I give this album a 9.5 out of 10. The reason why it's not a 10 is because I don't know. I just, it's close. I just don't know why I can't say a 10. I don't know, but it's really close. 9.5 out of 10. The only thing I really have to say is I really wish this album would have been longer. If this album was like 60, 65, 70 plus minutes, I would have loved this album way more. But 53 minutes of material, it's amazing. It just blows my mind. The Ocean did an amazing job. Thank you, The Ocean. Thank you for bringing this album, Pelagial, to us. So that's my review, guys. 9.5 out of 10. If you like me and you like the review, like the video. And if you like me and you want to see more of me, click subscribe or check out my channel by clicking my name down below. Thanks for watching. See ya.